French President Emmanuel Macron today gave a scathing interview, which is making headlines for certain statements right now. And it should be noted that Macron is not the most hawkish person in the European Union, but judging by what he has just said, patience is already running thin. And patience is running thin, not with regard to Putin, not with regard to the war in Europe, not with regard to Volodymyr Zelensky, not with regard to competition from Germany and Scholz, but with regard to Donald Trump. And here, it seems to me, Macron is precisely trying to find his place, having lost absolute leadership, especially after Olaf Scholz appeared, and now Merz is appearing as well. That is, Germany still pulls a lot of European covers over to itself, so to speak, and Macron still can't manage to do it. Thank you. To make France great again, yes, that's what he's trying to do now. Macron has yet another chance, another opportunity to do this, taking advantage of the rhetoric and the pressure from the Trump administration, which happened many, many months ago. Listen, these are the French. We know them. First, they'll finish eating their frog legs. Then they'll think things over, weigh everything. And only after that will they come out with some sort of communication. Macron is French to the core. A Frenchman who spent a long time thinking, how can I finally show that it's us, it's France, it's the leader of the entire European continent. Eurasian, well, European in this case, continent. So in short, what did he say? He said that Trump wants to break up Europe, and that's why we need to prepare for confrontation with the United States and to challenge the dollar. This now sounds more like the Brazilian leader Lula. Yes, to challenge the dollar. Let's add France to BRICS as well. But Macron means something a bit different. What he means is, and I quote, when there is a clear act of aggression, I think we shouldn't bow down or dodge or try to make any deals with Donald Trump. I think we've been trying to use this strategy for several months now. It's not working. It's not working. Macron says that we need to do things in such a way as to invest on a large scale and challenge the hegemony of the dollar. That is the eurozone. He means the eurozone. Europe has its own currency. And the currency, by the way, in relation to the dollar is currently feeling very strong. The value of the euro is rising now. Macron believes that the Greenland moment, as he called it, should be seen as a wake-up call. A wake-up call. And urgent action must be taken immediately regarding this signal, because it clearly indicates that meaningful structural reforms have failed to materialize for a very long time now. And this European global bloc currently possesses virtually no significant geopolitical influence on the world stage at all. Furthermore, this persistent silence and growing tension between the United States and the European Union does not bode well for the future of international relations. Macron predicts that in the coming months, the United States will attack Europe over digital regulation, in particular. That's his forecast. Regarding dialogue with the Russian Federation, that's also quite an interesting story. Macron said that it is urgently necessary to restore, in fact, the relationship with the Russian Federation. He says that the geographical situation will not change. Whether we like the Russians or not, Russia will exist tomorrow as well, and it is located at our borders. By our borders, he means the borders of the European Union. In 2027, well, God willing, and so on and so forth, Ukraine too, according to one version, may become a full-fledged member state. If not a full-fledged one, then de facto to be a member of the European Union, and the de jure nuances will be settled later. This is one of the points of the 20-point plan that is currently being coordinated. So he says, our borders will inevitably, sooner or later, come into contact with Russia's. And in fact, they already do, because the Baltic countries, as you know, Poland, Kaliningrad, all of that exists. And he says that we won't be able to avoid all of this. So let's talk to Russia. And he was supported in this. Latvia and Estonia. Germany and Britain were completely opposed. And here, Latvia and Estonia are understandable, but Germany and Britain are two more. Giants, along with France, who are trying to play the leading role in the European Union. As I said, everything here is permeated with political ambition and the moment that Emmanuel Macron is pursuing. Emmanuel Macron, who is constantly facing political turbulence in France, it never stops. Emmanuel Macron, who is now in his second term, his last one, obviously, has nothing to lose. And he needs to make his mark in history as more than just the man who keeps calling Putin and more than just the person who's married to his former teacher. This is how Macron wants to be remembered, as the person who will change the very concept of the European Union. The photo you see is also a front page from Reuters. This, friends, is a man who has already visited Putin. In other words, dialogue is one thing, but France, aside from these statements, is already making moves in this direction. This is Emmanuel Macron, the diplomatic advisor to the French president. He has already been to Moscow and spoken with Russian officials. About what? Now what? One of Reuters' sources says that Bonnet met with some people in the Kremlin. He did not provide further details except that the goal is dialogue on key issues, primarily those concerning Ukraine. Two diplomatic sources also told Reuters that Bonn held negotiations, likely with Yuri Ushakov, and that's it. He did not meet with Putin, with Ushakov. Ushakov is essentially a person who is extremely close, who leads the negotiation track with the Americans on Ukraine, basically Anchorage and everything else. Macron really wants to be there. And he wants to be there at the head of this united Europe. Macron said more that if we don't unite now, then in 5 years, Europe will be destroyed if it does not start to confront Donald Trump. And here Macron got a breakthrough. Like Sterlitz. Why? Because, friends, well, what are 5 years? In 5 years, Trump will not be in America. The Republicans might not even survive the midterm elections in November. In 2026. And when Macron says, let's unite now and build our own line, a strategy with Putin, with the Russian Federation, create these joint defense forces, by the way, Ukraine is not against it, to become the foundation of these defense forces, but it's a bit different there, a coalition of the willing and all that. This discussion is extremely diverse. But he says, let's unite, because in 5 years, America will simply sweep away this Europe. I mean, the European Union. It will be destroyed economically. Well, to be honest, no. That is simply not going to happen. And no one believes Macron right now. Do you understand? They don't believe him, and why? Because this is Macron's attempt to save himself. Moscow also responded to all these statements made this morning by the French president. Putin's press secretary Peskov says that there have already been contacts between Moscow and Paris, which, if necessary, would allow for a prompt establishment of dialogue at the highest level. Well, obviously referring specifically to the story with the advisor. This one here. Macron's advisor, Emmanuel Macron. So, Peskov continues, saying that the Kremlin has taken note of Macron's statement about the need to restore relations with Russia. However, at the moment, they do not see any signals that Paris is truly ready for contact at the leaders' level. Peskov also added that Moscow has long considered reducing Russian-French relations to zero to be counterproductive and harmful for all parties. He also separately stated that the Russian Federation is expecting a prompt new round of negotiations involving representatives from Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. But there are no specific dates yet. And Europe and Macron are not included either. And in the Kremlin, almost as an afterthought, somewhere between comments about Macron, Peskov made this statement. As for Turkey, they responded to Turkey's statement about the possible need to possess nuclear weapons. According to Peskov, the non-proliferation regime is the cornerstone of nuclear security, and Moscow expects nuclear states to behave accordingly so as not to provoke a nuclear arms race. Macron is the leader of a nuclear state, just to remind you. And Macron is now clearly explaining that since he leads a nuclear state and the United Kingdom is also a nuclear state, he wants to be able to speak directly and on behalf of the entire European Union. That's how it is. But once again, I want to emphasize this belligerence. Its time passed back in 2022, unfortunately for Macron. And now is simply not his time, no matter what he does. And in fact, today, well, you understand.